The Galactic Council had kept peace among the stars for 12,000 years. This was not an opinion or a boast. It was simply a fact, recorded in countless archives across 1,000 worlds. The elder races had built something magnificent, and they knew it. The council chamber floated at the heart of Station Prime, a massive structure that orbited no star and belonged to no single species. Here, representatives from 47 spacefaring civilizations gathered to discuss trade, settle disputes, and guide the galaxy toward continued prosperity. Counselor Varath of the Velith stood at his designated platform, his crystalline body catching the soft light that filled the chamber. His species had been founding members of the council. They remembered the chaos before unity. They had helped write the charter that bound all members to common cause. Today, however, Varath found himself dealing with an unusual matter. "The probe has returned," announced the Keeper of Records, a djinn whose insectoid form clicked softly as she spoke. "A new species has achieved faster-than-light travel. They call themselves humans. They come from a small world in the outer spiral arm." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. New species were rare. Most civilizations destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. Those that survived usually took centuries to develop jump drives. "Show us," Varath commanded. The chamber's central display flickered to life. Images appeared. A blue and green world swirling with white clouds, cities spreading across continents, ships pushing outward from their home star. Clumsy and slow by council standards, but functional. The humans themselves were soft creatures. 2 arms, 2 legs, no natural weapons worth mentioning. They lived short lives, barely a century at most. Their recorded history spanned only a few thousand years. By galactic standards, they were infants. "They meet the basic criteria," the Keeper continued. "Stable governments, no active planetary wars, sufficient technology. Protocol suggests we extend an invitation to provisional membership." Counselor Korath, a massive aquatic being who spoke through a translation membrane, rumbled his agreement. "We have always welcomed new voices. It costs us nothing and gains us goodwill." The vote passed without debate. The council had performed this ritual dozens of times over the millennia. A drone would be sent. The new species would receive the invitation with joy and gratitude. They would send eager representatives who would sit quietly in the back of the chamber, learning the old ways, grateful for the protection and opportunity that membership provided. It was all very predictable. 3 months later, the drone returned with humanity's response. Varath reviewed it in his private quarters, and his crystalline form flickered with confusion. The humans had not simply accepted. They had sent questions, hundreds of questions. They wanted to know about voting procedures. They asked about trade regulations and territorial rights. They requested detailed explanations of the Mutual Defense Clause. They wanted the entire charter, all 9,000 pages of it, translated into something called 17 languages. Most strangely of all, they wanted to negotiate terms. Varath summoned the other senior counselors to an emergency meeting. "This is unprecedented," Korath observed, his membrane bubbling with amusement. "They bargain as though they have something to offer." "They have nothing," clicked Zora, the Jinn representative. "A single world, a handful of colony ships. What do they think they can demand from us?" "Perhaps they do not understand their position," Varath suggested. "They are young, ignorant. They may not realize that provisional membership is already generous beyond their worth." The council decided to send a patient response. They explained that provisional membership was not a negotiation. It was a gift. The humans would be protected by the council's combined might. They would have access to trade networks spanning the galaxy. They would receive technologies that would advance their civilization by centuries. All they had to do was accept. The humans sent more questions. Specifically, they wanted to know why provisional members could not vote on matters affecting their own territories. They asked about the process for achieving full membership. They pointed out several apparent contradictions between sections of the charter. Varath began to suspect that the humans had actually read the entire document. This was unusual. Most new species accepted membership first and read the fine print later, if at all. 6 months after the initial invitation, the humans finally sent their acceptance. But they also sent something else, a formal list of concerns they intended to raise, once their representative reached Station Prime. They wanted these concerns entered into the official record before their arrival. Counselor Korath found this hilarious. They have not even left their home system, and already they wish to reform our institutions. The boldness of the ignorant is truly entertaining. Vareth was less amused. Something about these creatures bothered him. They behaved like no young species he had ever encountered. They did not seem grateful or eager or nervous. They seemed like they were preparing for something. But preparing for what? The human delegation arrived at Station Prime aboard a ship they had built themselves. It was not elegant. It looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, which it probably had been. But it worked. The humans had traveled halfway across the galaxy in a vessel of their own construction. Ambassador Chen Wei stepped onto Station Prime with a small team of advisors. She was unremarkable by galactic standards. Short, soft. Her species did not even have protective scales or shells. A strong wind might knock her over. The welcoming committee, led by a junior Veleth named Christos, guided her through the station's gleaming corridors. "You will find your quarters comfortable," Christos explained. "They have been adjusted for your atmospheric and gravitational preferences. The council chamber is located in the central sphere. As a provisional member, you will be seated in the outer ring." "The outer ring," Chen Wei repeated. "Where are full members seated?" "In the inner rings, of course, closer to the speaker's platform, but that need not concern you. Provisional members rarely speak during sessions. Your role is to observe and learn." "I see. How long does provisional membership typically last?" 50 years is standard, sometimes longer if a species requires additional time to demonstrate their readiness. "Demonstrate to whom?" Christos paused. It was an odd question. "To the council, of course. The senior members evaluate each provisional species and decide when they have proven themselves worthy of full participation." Ambassador Chen Wei nodded slowly. She did not argue or complain. She simply asked, "And what criteria do they use for this evaluation?" "The criteria are complex. They have developed over many millennia. Each species is judged individually based on their contributions to council prosperity, their adherence to charter principles, and their general conduct." "Is there a written document that explains these criteria?" "Not precisely. The evaluation process relies heavily on tradition and the wisdom of the elder races. So the species being evaluated have no clear standard to meet. They simply wait until the senior members decide they have waited long enough." Christos felt uncomfortable. When she put it that way, it sounded less noble than it usually did. "The system has worked well for 12,000 years. "I'm sure it has," Chen Wei said. Her voice was calm, neutral. She might have been discussing the weather. That evening, in her assigned quarters, Ambassador Chen Wei gathered her team. "First impressions?" she asked. Marcus Torres, her military advisor, spoke first. "The station's defensive capabilities are impressive, but standardized. They rely on overwhelming force rather than tactical flexibility. They have not fought a real war in centuries." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the cultural specialist, added her observations. "The power structure is exactly what we expected. The elder races control everything that matters. The smaller species are members in name only. They trade on terms they did not set and vote as they are told." James Okonkwo, the legal expert, had spent the entire journey studying the charter. "The document is full of contradictions. It promises equal treatment, but allows the senior council to override any decision. It guarantees territorial integrity, but permits intervention for vaguely defined stability concerns. It's a framework designed to sound fair while ensuring the founders keep control." Chen Wei nodded. "So we have 12,000 years of accumulated privilege disguised as tradition, a charter that promises more than it delivers, and dozens of smaller species who have never known anything different." "What's our move?" Torres asked. Chen Wei looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. 8 billion people who had sent her here with simple instructions. Do not bow, do not beg. Find out how the galaxy really works, and find out where we fit. "We do exactly what they expect," she said. "We sit in the back. We observe. We learn. We ask questions that make them uncomfortable. And we read every single word they have ever written down." "That's it?" That's the beginning. She turned back to her team. They invited us here because they thought we would be grateful. They think we're children who will sit quietly while the adults manage the galaxy. They have no idea what they have invited into their house. Torres smiled. And what have they invited? Something they have never encountered before. A species that pays attention. In the council chamber the next day, Ambassador Chen Wei took her seat in the outer ring. She was surrounded by representatives from other provisional and minor species. Most of them barely glanced at her. They were used to being ignored. She sat quietly through the session. She did not speak. She did not interrupt. She simply watched and listened as the elder races conducted business as they had for millennia. And she took notes. So many notes. Counselor Vareth noticed her from his platform in the inner ring. Such a small creature. Such a short-lived species. What could they possibly hope to accomplish in their few decades of membership? He dismissed her from his thoughts and returned to the day's agenda. It was, he would later reflect, the beginning of his greatest mistake. Ambassador Chen Wei had been on Station Prime for 6 months. In that time, she had spoken exactly 12 words in the council chamber. All 12 had been part of her initial greeting on the first day. Since then, she had only watched. The elder races found this behavior curious at first, then amusing, and finally boring. New species usually made some attempt to participate. They asked naive questions. They proposed ideas that had been rejected centuries ago. They gave the senior counselors opportunities to explain, with gentle patience, why things were done the way they were done. The humans did none of this. They sat, they observed. They wrote in their strange electronic devices, and they said nothing. Counselor Vareth occasionally wondered what they were recording, but he had more important matters to occupy his attention. The Karath shipping guilds were disputing transit fees with the Xin manufacturing collectives. It was the same argument they had been having for 3,000 years. It required careful management to prevent escalation. He did not have time to worry about silent humans. What Varath did not know was that Ambassador Chen Wei's team had been very busy indeed. Every night after the council sessions ended, they gathered in their quarters to analyze what they had seen. Dr. Tanaka tracked voting patterns. She could now predict with 90% accuracy how each species would vote on any given issue. More importantly, she could identify which species actually made their own decisions and which simply followed the lead of their patrons. The answer was disturbing. Out of 47 member species, only 5 had any real independence. The Velith, the Korath, the Jin, the Moranthi, and the Pelori. These 5 controlled everything. They controlled the financial systems, the shipping lanes, the manufacturing sectors, and the military protocols. Everyone else was a dependent. James Okonkwo continued his study of the charter. He had now read it 3 times along with 10,000 pages of supplementary rulings and precedents. He had found something interesting. The charter was not always like this, he explained to the team. The original document, written 12,000 years ago, was actually quite fair. It established equal voting rights, protected territorial sovereignty, and limited the power of any single species or coalition. What changed? Chen Wei asked. Amendments, thousands of them, each one small and reasonable on its own. But taken together, they completely transformed the council. The elder races did not seize power in one dramatic moment. They accumulated it slowly over centuries, one minor adjustment at a time. Can the amendments be reversed? Okonkwo smiled. That is the beautiful part. Yes. Section 7834 of the Charter allows any member species to propose an amendment reversal. The proposal must be seconded by at least 5 other members and then passes with a simple majority vote. Torres frowned. But the elder races control the votes. They would never allow their power to be reduced. They control the votes now, Okonkwo agreed. But here is what I have discovered. The smaller species have votes too. Real votes with equal weight under the Charter. They have simply never used them independently because they have never thought to try. They vote as their patrons direct because that is what they have always done. Chen Wei leaned forward. You are saying that the Charter technically gives the smaller species the power to outvote the elder races? They have just never realized it. Or they realized it but saw no point. What would one small species accomplish against the combined might of the founders? But if the smaller species voted together, as a bloc, they would have overwhelming majority. The elder races have only 5 votes out of 47. The room went silent as everyone processed this information. We need to be careful, Dr. Tanaka warned. If the elder races perceive a threat to their power, they might take action outside the charter. Military action. They would have to justify it, Okonkwo replied. The charter explicitly forbids aggression against member species. If they broke their own laws, they would destroy the very system that gives them power. The other species might tolerate being controlled, but they would not tolerate being attacked. Chenwei stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the vast station, at the ships coming and going from 100 worlds. 12,000 years of accumulated power. 5 species at the top, 42 beneath them, and now humanity, the newest arrival, sitting in the very back row. We do not want to destroy this council, she said slowly. It has kept peace for millennia. That matters. But peace through control is not the same as peace through choice. We need to show the smaller species that they have options, that the charter protects them, even from the council itself. How? Torres asked. By using the charter ourselves, publicly, correctly, in ways the elder races cannot argue against without admitting that their system is unfair. She turned back to her team. Find me an opportunity, something small, a situation where we can help a smaller species without directly challenging the elder races. Something that is clearly permitted under the charter, but has simply never been done. Dr. Tanaka consulted her notes. The Minari. They are an amphibious species from a swamp world in the outer territories. Their primary export is medicinal fungi used in treatments for several common galactic diseases. The Jin have held exclusive trading rights with them for 3,000 years. Exclusive rights? I thought the charter prohibited trade monopolies. It prohibits formal monopolies. The Jin control it informally. They are the only species with shipping routes that reach Minari space. No other species has bothered to establish alternative routes because the profit margins are small and the distance is great. But there is nothing in the charter that prevents another species from establishing trade with the Minari? Nothing at all. I have checked repeatedly. Any member species may negotiate bilateral trade agreements with any other member species, provided no existing exclusive contracts are violated. The Minari have no exclusive contract with the Jin. They simply have no alternatives. Chen Wei smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had found exactly what they were looking for. Contact the Minari delegation, quietly. Let them know that humanity would like to discuss trade opportunities. The next week, Ambassador Chen Wei requested a meeting with the Minari representative. His name was Drell, and he was a soft-spoken being with moist green skin and large, gentle eyes. He had served on the council for 30 years and had never once been invited to a private meeting by another species. I do not understand, he said, sitting across from Chen Wei in her quarters. Why would humanity wish to trade with us? We have little to offer. Our fungi are valuable, but the quantities are small. The Jin handle all our exports. At what price? Chen Wei asked. Drell hesitated. The price is set by Jin assessors. It has been the same for many centuries. Has the price ever increased? No, but it has not decreased either. It is stable, reliable. Do you know what your fungi sell for on the open market? Drell blinked his large eyes. I do not. The Jin handle distribution. We receive payment and do not ask questions. Chen Wei slid a data pad across the table. We have done some research. Your fungi sell for approximately 8 times what the Jin pay you. They have been making enormous profits from your labor for 3,000 years. The Minari representative stared at the numbers. His moist skin paled slightly. This cannot be accurate. It is. We verified through multiple sources. The Jin are not breaking any laws. They are simply taking advantage of the fact that you have no other options, until now. Drell looked up. What are you proposing? Humanity would like to establish a direct trade route to your world. We would purchase your fungi at fair market prices and transport them ourselves. You would receive 5 times your current payment. We would still make a modest profit. Everyone benefits except the Jin, who have been exploiting you for millennia. But the Jin will object. They will bring this to the council. Let them. The Charter permits bilateral trade agreements between any member species. We have read the relevant sections. There is nothing they can do. Drell sat in silence for a long moment. His species had learned long ago to accept their place in the galaxy. They were small. They were weak. They depended on the protection of stronger species. This was simply how things were. But this human was offering something different. Not charity, not protection. A fair deal between equals. Why? He finally asked. Why would humanity do this? You gain so little from this trade. The profit is nothing compared to what other goods would bring you. Chenwei considered her answer carefully. Because the way things are is not the way things have to be. Because we read your council's charter and believed what it said about equal treatment and mutual respect. Because where we come from, we have a saying, the strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. We have always hated that saying. We came to the stars hoping to find something better. And have you? Not yet, but we are working on it. The trade agreement between humanity and the Minari was signed 3 weeks later. It was a simple document, registered with the Council as required, following every protocol exactly. The Jin filed a formal objection the next day. Councillor Zora stood before the chamber, her insectoid form clicking with agitation. This agreement violates the spirit of established arrangements. Humanity is disrupting trade relationships that have functioned smoothly for thousands of years. Ambassador Chen Wei requested permission to respond. For the first time in 6 months, she rose from her seat in the outer ring. The council recognizes the human representative, Varath announced. The chamber fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what the quiet humans would finally say. Chen Wei spoke calmly and clearly. We reviewed the charter before entering this agreement. Section 4, 212, subsection 7, clearly states that any member species may establish bilateral trade agreements that do not violate existing exclusive contracts. The Minari have no exclusive contract with the Jin Collective. We verified this through official records. Our agreement breaks no rules. Zora's mandibles clicked furiously. The Minari have traded with us for 3,000 years. There is an understanding. An understanding is not a contract. The Charter does not recognize understandings. It recognizes written agreements, properly registered and legally binding. If the Jin wish to protect their trading relationship with the Minari, they should have offered terms worth protecting. The chamber erupted in murmurs. No provisional species had ever spoken to a founding member this way. Councillor Varath called for order. The human representative raises a technical point. The council will review the relevant charter sections and issue a ruling. The review took 3 days. In the end, the council had no choice. Their own laws were clear. Humanity had broken no rules. The trade agreement stood, and in the outer ring, where the smaller species sat, representatives began to look at the humans with new eyes. Not as just another junior member waiting their turn, but as something else entirely, something that might change everything. Word spread quickly through Station Prime. The humans had challenged the Jin and won, not through force or threats, but through the Council's own rules. They had simply read the Charter more carefully than anyone had read it in centuries. Within weeks, other species began approaching Ambassador Chen Wei. The Threll wanted to discuss shipping arrangements. The Kavari had questions about resource rights. The Pelori, a minor founding race who had long been overshadowed by the Big Three, expressed quiet interest in cooperation. Humanity helped where they could. They did not offer charity or make grand promises. They simply showed other species where the Charter protected them, explained how to file proper documentation, and offered fair alternatives to exploitative arrangements. By the end of year 1, humanity had established 17 bilateral agreements with minor species. None of them violated any council rules. All of them reduced the dependency that smaller civilizations had on the elder races. The Velith, Koreth, and Jin watched with growing concern. This was not how new species behaved. Provisional members were supposed to be grateful, quiet, and eager to please. They were supposed to spend their 50 years learning the proper way of doing things, not teaching others how to circumvent established arrangements. Councillor Varath requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen Wei. They met in a neutral chamber, away from the formal council halls. I will speak directly, Varath said. his crystalline form pulsing with carefully controlled colors. Your actions are causing disruption. We have broken no rules, Chen Wei replied. Rules are not the only thing that matters. There is tradition. There is understanding. There is the balance that has kept peace for 12,000 years. The balance that keeps your species in control. Vareth paused. He had not expected such bluntness from such a young race. We have earned our position through millennia of service. We built this council. We maintain its institutions. We protect its members. You profit from its members. There is a difference. And what do you propose? That we abandon 12,000 years of experience? That we let chaos return to the galaxy? Chen Wei leaned forward. I propose nothing. We are simply doing what the Charter permits. If that causes problems, perhaps the problem is not with us. The Charter was never meant to be used this way. Then perhaps you should not have written it this way. She stood to leave. We did not come here to overthrow your council, Counselor. We came here to participate in it. We took your invitation seriously. We believed what your charter promised about equal treatment and mutual respect. If that belief causes disruption, then your charter was a lie. It was not a lie, it was an ideal. Ideals that are never practiced are the same as lies. We have a saying on Earth, actions speak louder than words. Your words promised equality. Your actions delivered control. We intend to hold you to your words. She left Vareth standing alone in the chamber, his crystalline form flickering with colors that had no translation in any human language. That night, the senior counselors met in secret. Varath reported his conversation with the human ambassador. They are more dangerous than we realize, Zora clicked. They are not simply disrupting trade. They are spreading ideas. The smaller species are beginning to ask questions they have never asked before. Questions are not dangerous, Korath rumbled through his membrane. They cannot force anyone to do anything. They do not need force. They are showing the smaller species that the Charter protects them, that they have rights they have never exercised. If enough of them realize this at once, they could outvote us on any issue. The chamber fell silent. This was the fear that none of them had ever spoken aloud. The founding races held only 5 votes out of 47. Their power had never depended on votes. It depended on control of resources, shipping, and finance. It depended on tradition and expectations. It depended on the smaller species never realizing that they had any other choice. The humans were systematically destroying those dependencies. What do you propose? Vareth asked. We cannot act against them directly, Zora admitted. They have been careful to break no rules. If we punish them for following the Charter, we undermine the Charter itself. But we can isolate them, refuse to trade with any species that trades with them. Make it clear that cooperation with humanity comes at a cost. Economic warfare, Korath observed. It might work, but it might also backfire. If we appear to be bullying the smaller species, we confirm everything the humans have been saying about us. Then what? Do nothing? Watch them dismantle everything we have built? Varath's form pulsed thoughtfully. There may be another approach. The humans care about their charter arguments because they believe the charter matters. What if we showed them that some things are more important than rules? Explain. A crisis. Something that requires the council to act outside normal procedures. Something that reminds everyone why the elder races must remain in control. The galaxy is dangerous. Peace is fragile. When threatened, species naturally turn to those with the power to protect them. You are suggesting we manufacture a crisis? I am suggesting we wait for one. The galaxy is large. Threats emerge constantly. When the next one appears, we respond decisively. We remind everyone what strength looks like. The humans can quote charter sections. Can they defend against an enemy fleet? The other counselors considered this. It was not a new strategy. Crises had been used before to consolidate power, to justify emergency measures that somehow never quite ended. It was ugly but effective. And if no crisis appears, Vareth's form flickered. Then we remain patient. The humans are short-lived creatures. Their ambassador will be dead in a century. Perhaps her successors will be more reasonable. They agreed to wait and watch, for now. But the galaxy, as Varath had observed, was large, and crises did not always wait for convenient timing. In year 2 of humanity's membership, a trade dispute between the Korath shipping guilds and a minor species called the Selani escalated unexpectedly. The Selani had refused to accept Korath pricing for a shipment of rare minerals. Instead, they had contacted humanity about alternative transport. The Korath responded by blockading Selani space. No ships in or out. It was technically illegal under the charter, but enforcement required a council vote, and the Korath had enough allies to prevent any vote from occurring. Ambassador Chen Wei brought the matter to the chamber floor anyway. The charter is clear, she stated. Section 2-341 prohibits member species from blocking the territorial space of other member species without council authorization. The Korath have not received such authorization. Their blockade is illegal. Councillor Korath responded through his translation membrane. The Selani have violated contractual obligations. We are simply protecting our legitimate interests until the dispute is resolved. There is no contract. The Selani never signed exclusive shipping rights with the Korath guilds. I have reviewed their records personally. There are understandings that predate written records. The Selani have always shipped through our routes. They cannot simply change arrangements without consultation. The charter does not recognize understandings. Only contracts. Then perhaps the charter is insufficient. The chamber went very quiet. A founding member had just suggested that the council's fundamental document was inadequate. It was almost unprecedented. Chen Wei pressed forward. I move that the council vote on enforcing Section 2341. The Korath blockade should be lifted immediately. The vote was called. The elder races voted against enforcement. Most of the minor species, following old habits, voted with their traditional patrons. But not all of them. The Minari voted for enforcement. So did the Threll, the Kavari, and 4 other species that had established agreements with humanity over the past year. 7 votes against the elder race's position. The motion failed, but not by as much as it should have. The elder races still had control, but their control was visibly weakening. After the session, Councillor Vareth approached Ambassador Chen Wei in the corridors. You are teaching them to vote against us, he said. I am teaching them that they can vote at all. What they vote for is their choice. This cannot continue. The council functions because species trust the elder races to guide them. If that trust breaks down, everything falls apart. Trust earned through dependency is not trust. It is submission. You have confused the two for so long that you have forgotten the difference. And what would you have instead? Chaos, conflict, species voting their own interests without consideration for the greater good? Chen Wei stopped walking and turned to face him directly. I would have a council that actually works the way your charter claims it works, where every species has a real voice, where votes are not predetermined by who controls the shipping lanes, where agreements are fair because they have to be, not because the stronger party allows it. You describe a fantasy. Governance requires power. Without power, there is no enforcement. Without enforcement, there is no peace. Power concentrated in the hands of the few is not governance. It is domination. Your charter knew the difference once. That is why it promised equality. That is why it established voting rights and territorial protections. Your ancestors understood that lasting peace requires legitimacy, not just strength. Varath's form pulsed with frustration. Our ancestors lived in a different time. They could not have foreseen how the galaxy would develop. Or perhaps they foresaw it exactly, and their descendants chose to ignore their warnings. She resumed walking. The Selani are suffering because of your blockade. Their population will begin to run low on essential supplies within weeks. If you want to prove that the elder races deserve their position, try earning it. Lift the blockade. Negotiate fairly. Show the galaxy that you can lead through example rather than force. And if we refuse, Chen Wei glanced back, then you will prove everything we have been saying, and the next vote will be closer, and the one after that closer still. You can delay this change, Counselor. You cannot stop it. She walked away, leaving Vareth alone with his thoughts. The blockade was lifted 4 days later. The official reason was diplomatic breakthrough. The unofficial reason was that 3 more minor species had quietly informed the Korath that they were reconsidering their traditional arrangements. The elder races still controlled the council, but control, they were beginning to realize, was not the same as strength. And humanity had only been a member for 2 years. The crisis Counselor Vareth had hoped for arrived in year 3 of humanity's membership, but it did not arrive in the way anyone had expected. The Keth Dominion had been a distant threat for centuries. They occupied a region of space far beyond Council territory, separated by vast stretches of empty void. Occasional contacts suggested a militaristic society with little interest in diplomacy. The Council had classified them as a potential danger and left them alone. The Keth had other plans. Their invasion fleet appeared in Minari space without warning, 200 warships carrying enough ground troops to conquer a dozen worlds. Their demands were simple: surrender the medicinal fungi that made Minari valuable. Surrender the population to serve as a labor force. Surrender everything. The Minari had no military. They had never needed one. They were council members. The charter promised mutual defense. Representative Drell transmitted an emergency request to Station Prime. His transmission arrived in the middle of a council session, interrupting a routine trade discussion. "The Keth are invading," he said, his image flickering with static from the vast distance. "They have already destroyed our orbital stations. Ground forces are landing on the southern continent. We request immediate assistance under Section 891 of the Charter. An attack on one member is an attack on all." The chamber fell into shocked silence. An actual invasion. It had been so long since anyone had attacked a council member that many species had forgotten it was possible. Counselor Vareth called an emergency recess to allow the senior council to discuss response options. The elder races gathered in their private chamber, faces grim. "The Keth Dominion," Zora clicked. "We have always known they might become aggressive. It seems that day has arrived." "What are our options?" Korath rumbled. "The charter is clear," Vareth acknowledged. "Section 891 requires mutual defense. If we do not respond, we violate our own foundational principles. But responding means war with the Keth. Their fleet is substantial. We would win, eventually, but the cost would be significant. Many ships lost, many lives. For the Minari?" Zora's mandibles clicked with something like contempt. "They produce fungi. Important fungi, yes, but hardly worth the lives of our warriors." "The principle matters more than the Minari themselves," Vareth pointed out. "If we abandon them, every small species in the Council will see that our protection is conditional. They will know that when danger arrives, they are expendable." "Perhaps that is a lesson worth teaching," Korath suggested. "Small species should remember their place. They should be grateful for whatever protection we choose to provide." Varath considered this. Part of him agreed. The Minari had been causing problems lately, voting with the humans, questioning traditional arrangements. Perhaps a demonstration of their vulnerability would restore proper perspective. But another part of him worried. The humans had been watching everything. If the Council abandoned the Minari, Chen Wei would ensure that every minor species understood what it meant. The fragile coalition that the elder races still commanded would shatter. "We cannot abandon them openly," he concluded, "but we can delay. We can negotiate. The Keth want the fungi, not war. Perhaps we can arrange terms that give them what they want without requiring us to fight." "You mean sacrifice the Minari to preserve peace?" "I mean make difficult decisions that serve the greater good. The Minari are one species. The Council is 47. Sometimes mathematics must override sentiment." The Council agreed to propose negotiations. They would contact the Keth and offer terms. If the Keth accepted reasonable conditions, war could be avoided. If they refused, well, the Council would have demonstrated its willingness to seek peaceful solutions before resorting to force. Ambassador Chen Wei learned of this plan within hours. Her sources among the minor species had grown extensive over 3 years. She requested immediate recognition to address the chamber. "The human representative is recognized," Varath announced. Chen Wei stood in the outer ring, surrounded by the other minor species representatives. She looked small against the Grand Chamber, but her voice carried clearly. "I have learned that the Senior Council proposes negotiations with the Keth Dominion as a first response to their invasion of Minari space. I wish to register humanity's objection to this approach." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A provisional member objecting to Senior Council strategy was highly unusual. Your objection is noted, Vareth replied, but this is a military matter. The senior council has the expertise and authority to determine appropriate responses. The charter disagrees. Chen Wei held up her datapad. Section 891, subsection 3. Decisions regarding military response to attacks on member species shall be determined by full council vote. There is no provision for the senior council to make unilateral decisions in such matters. The senior council is not making unilateral decisions. We are proposing a course of action that the full council will vote on. Then let us vote now. I move that the council immediately invoke Section 891 and respond with military force to defend the Minari. Negotiations can occur after the invasion has been stopped, not while Minari citizens are dying. The chamber erupted. This was not how things were done. New species did not make motions on military matters. They certainly did not challenge senior council recommendations. Varath raised his hand for silence. The human representative's motion is technically in order. Does any member second this motion? No one spoke. The minor species looked at each other nervously. Voting against one's patrons on routine matters was one thing. Challenging the elder races on questions of war was something else entirely. Then Drell's holographic image flickered to life. He had been listening from his besieged world, watching his supposed allies debate while his people fled the Keth ground forces. Menari seconds the motion, he said quietly. We have been council members for 4,000 years. We have never asked for military aid. We have paid our dues, followed the rules, respected our agreements. We ask now only for what the Charter promises. An attack on one is an attack on all. Please, help us. The vote was called. The elder races voted for negotiation. This was expected. They had the votes to control outcomes on any issue that mattered. Then the minor species began to cast their votes, and one by one, they voted against their patrons. The Threll, the Kavari, the Solani, the Pelori. Species that had voted with the elder races for thousands of years looked at Representative Drell's flickering image, looked at their own charter guarantees, and made a different choice. When the vote was finished, military intervention had passed by 6 votes. The chamber fell silent. This had never happened. The elder races had never been outvoted on a matter of war and peace. The careful balance that had governed the council for 12,000 years had just shifted. Councillor Vareth stared at the results. Then he looked at Ambassador Chen Wei. How? He asked. You gave them a vote, she replied. They finally chose to use it. They have never voted against us on matters of consequence. They have never had a reason to. The Minari are not just a trading partner for these species. They are friends. They are proof that even small species can matter. You were willing to sacrifice them for convenience. The council decided that some things matter more than convenience. Verath's crystalline form pulsed with complex emotions, anger, fear, and something that might have been grudging respect. The council has voted, he announced to the chamber. Military forces will be deployed to defend Minari space. All member species are called upon to contribute according to their capabilities. The elder races would send their fleets. They had no choice. The charter bound them as surely as it bound everyone else. Ambassador Chen Wei turned to her military advisor. Marcus, contact Earth. Let them know we need everything we can spare. Everything? Torres looked surprised. Ambassador, we're a provisional member with limited resources. No one expects us to contribute significantly to a war this large. I know. Do it anyway. Why? Chen Wei watched the other representatives filing out of the chamber. Many of them glanced her way, some with gratitude, some with concern, some with something that looked like hope. Because we said we would, she answered. Because when we told the Minari that their lives matter, we meant it. Because if we only support our principles when it costs us nothing, then we do not really have principles at all. Torres nodded slowly. Earth won't like this. Sending ships into a war that is not ours, for species that most humans have never heard of. Then we will explain why it matters. We came here to change things, Marcus. Change is not free. It never has been. She looked back at the chamber, empty now except for the soft lights that never dimmed. The elder races think we are playing a political game. They think we want power for ourselves. They cannot imagine that we might actually believe what we say. Do we? We are about to find out. The war against the Keth Dominion lasted 11 months. It was the bloodiest conflict the galaxy had seen in 3,000 years. The Council fleet assembled within weeks of the vote. Elder race warships formed the core of the Armada, massive vessels with weapons capable of cracking planets. Thousands of years of military development concentrated into instruments of overwhelming power. The minor species contributed what they could: small patrol ships, supply transports, medical vessels. Their offerings seemed pitiful next to the elder race dreadnoughts. And then humanity arrived. Earth had sent 40% of its entire interstellar fleet, 127 warships, crewed by personnel who had volunteered knowing they might never return. Accompanying them were transport vessels carrying 12 million ground troops, along with supplies that represented a significant fraction of humanity's total interstellar reserves. Admiral Marcus Torres commanded the human forces from the bridge of the carrier Perseverance. He had argued against this deployment in private, warning Ambassador Chen Wei that the losses could cripple humanity's expansion for decades. She had listened, acknowledged his concerns, and ordered him to proceed anyway. "If we only defend our principles when it is convenient," she had told him, "then we do not really have principles." Counselor Vareth observed the human fleet's arrival with something approaching disbelief. He had expected token forces, perhaps a dozen ships, enough to claim participation without real sacrifice. What he saw instead looked like a species betting everything on a single commitment. He contacted Admiral Torres directly. "Your contribution is remarkable, Admiral, but surely this is excessive. The Minari are not even your allies." "They are council members," Torres replied. "So are we. The charter says an attack on one is an attack on all. It does not say an attack on one is an attack on all, unless you find it inconvenient. Your species has been members for 3 years. You barely know the Minari. We know they needed help. We know we could provide it. What else is there to know?" Varath had no answer. The war that followed was brutal but decisive. The Keth Dominion had underestimated the Council's response. They had expected negotiations, delays, perhaps a token force that they could brush aside while completing their conquest. Instead, they found themselves facing the combined military power of 47 species. But the elder races fought carefully. They protected their valuable ships, hung back from the most dangerous engagements, let others take the risks. Their fleets were too important to lose. Humanity fought differently. Admiral Torres positioned his forces at the front lines. Human ships took the first hits, drew enemy fire, created openings for the elder race vessels to exploit. When the Keth attempted a breakthrough toward the Minari homeworld, it was a human carrier group that intercepted them. The Perseverance was destroyed in that engagement, along with 17 other human ships. Admiral Torres died on his bridge, buying time for the elder race dreadnoughts to arrive and turn the tide. The Keth commander later reported that he could not understand human tactics. They did not retreat when losses mounted. They did not preserve their forces for future engagements. They fought as though victory mattered more than survival. Ambassador Chen Wei received the casualty reports at Station Prime. 3 million human lives lost over 11 months of warfare. Nearly a quarter of everything humanity had sent. She read each name. It took her 4 days. The war ended when the Keth Dominion sued for peace. Their invasion fleet had been destroyed, their territory pushed back beyond the void that had once protected them. The Council imposed strict conditions: reparations to the Minari, permanent military restrictions, supervision of their government for the next century. It was a complete victory, and it had come at a price that no one had expected humanity to pay. The Council convened in full session 3 weeks after the peace agreement was signed. The chamber was fuller than it had been in centuries. Representatives from every member species, even those who rarely attended, wanted to be present. Counselor Vareth rose to speak. His crystalline form pulsed with colors that suggested complex emotions. "The Council has achieved a great victory," he began. "The Keth Dominion has been defeated. Minari space has been liberated. The Charter's promise of mutual defense has been fulfilled." He paused, looking across the chamber at the assembled representatives. "But I must speak honestly about what this victory has taught me. When the Keth invaded, I and my fellow senior counselors proposed negotiation. We calculated costs and benefits. We weighed Minari lives against our own resources. We found the mathematics unfavorable. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Senior counselors did not admit mistakes in public. The younger species disagreed. They voted for immediate action. They voted to honor the Charter's promise, regardless of cost. At the time, I believed this was naive. I believed they did not understand the true price of war. He turned toward the section where the human delegation sat. Ambassador Chen Wei had been joined by a new military advisor, a young woman named Captain Sarah Okonkwo, daughter of the legal expert who had helped humanity find its voice in these halls. Humanity committed 40% of their fleet to this war. They lost a quarter of what they sent. 12 million of their soldiers died on Minari soil. They did this for a species they barely knew, in a war that was not theirs, because they had made a promise. The chamber was completely silent. I have served this council for 800 years. I have seen many species come and go. I have watched empires rise and fall. In all that time, I have never seen anything like what humanity did for the Minari. He stepped down from his platform and walked toward the human delegation. This was unprecedented. Senior counselors did not leave their platforms during session. When we invited humanity to join the council, we expected them to be like every other young species. Eager, grateful, obedient. We expected them to learn our ways and accept their place in our order. He stopped in front of Ambassador Chen Wei. We were wrong. You did not accept our order. You read our charter and believed what it said. You took our promises seriously, even when we had forgotten what those promises meant. You showed the smaller species that they had voices, and you showed the elder races that our words had consequences. Chen Wei stood to face him. We only did what the charter required. No, you did what the charter promised. There is a difference. We wrote those words 12,000 years ago because we believed in them. Over time, we forgot. We let tradition replace principle. We let control replace cooperation. You reminded us of what we were supposed to be. He turned back to the chamber. This council is changed. The old balance of power is broken. The smaller species now vote their conscience. The elder races must earn cooperation rather than demand it. Some of my colleagues see this as disaster. I see it as opportunity. He looked at the gathered representatives, hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds, all watching in silence. For 12,000 years, we have kept peace through control. Perhaps it is time to try keeping peace through trust. Perhaps it is time to become the council our charter always described. Not because we must, but because we should. Ambassador Chen Wei spoke into the silence that followed. The Minari are rebuilding. They lost much in this war, but they still exist. Their children will grow up free because this council chose to honor its promises. That matters more than any political arrangement. You believe this is enough? That principles matter more than power? I believe that power without principles is just another word for tyranny. We did not come to the stars to build empires. We came to find something better. Today, thanks to the sacrifice of millions of our people and the courage of species we have only begun to know, we found it. Representative Drell rose from his seat. His moist green skin still bore scars from the Keth occupation. His large eyes glistened with emotion. The Minari will not forget what humanity did for us. You had nothing to gain. You lost so much, and you came anyway. He looked around the chamber. This is what we should all aspire to be. Not stronger than each other, better for each other. The session continued for many hours. New procedures were proposed. Old amendments were reconsidered. The charter that humanity had studied so carefully was being rewritten, not by force, but by consensus. Later, in the corridors of Station Prime, Counselor Verath walked beside Ambassador Chen Wei. You knew this would happen, he observed. From the beginning, you planned to change us. We hoped to, she admitted. We read your charter and saw what it could be. We believed it was worth trying to make it real. And now, what do you hope for? Chen Wei stopped at a viewport overlooking the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were still returning from war. Human ships bearing the bodies of those who had not survived. Each one would be mourned. Each name would be remembered. I hope we can build something that lasts, not because we control it, but because everyone believes in it. A council that keeps its promises, a galaxy where small species and large species truly work together, where the strong protect the weak not because they must, but because they understand that everyone benefits when everyone matters. A fantasy, Vareth said, but his tone suggested he no longer entirely believed that. Perhaps, but 3 years ago the idea that the elder races could be outvoted was also a fantasy. Things change. That is what makes them worth fighting for. She turned to face him one last time. You said we made you remember what you were supposed to be. That is not quite right. We showed you what you could become. The choice to become it was always yours. She walked away, leaving Vareth alone with the stars. The council had made one mistake when they invited humanity to join. They had assumed they knew what humanity was. They had been wrong, and the galaxy would never be the same.